Hi, Coni Meyers here with Kickbutt Leadership, and this is my co-host.
I'm Kim White with the My Sexy Business team.
And welcome back to another incredible session for the Kickbutt Leadership Conference. I was at the Woman Up event that took place in California just a couple months ago. And first of all the speakers were they all blew me away. But when I heard my next guest speak, she spoke. Her topic was she said, he said, and I took so many notes I was running out of paper because of all of the great content and stuff that she had. And so then I approached her about joining me for this conference, and I'm so thrilled that she said yes. Valerie Garcia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Well, I'll ask you the same thing I ask everybody. Were you a kickbutt leader? Were you a leader as a child?
I didn't have much of a choice. I am the second child and the oldest daughter of 15 kids.
How many?
15.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. Same parents, no twins. And just a lot of kids. So I didn't really have a choice growing up. I was, the oldest daughter, and I was the one that was supposed to set an example. So I was kind of in that leadership position really early on in life.
Wow. I guess so. So, out of the skills you learned from helping with your brothers and sisters and being a leader in your family, what are the skills that you now use that you actually achieved or got then?
Well, I learned to get comfortable speaking in front of an audience really quickly because, when I first started interviewing for jobs and people would say, "Are you comfortable speaking in front of a group?" I would say, "Yeah, that's dinner at my house." So that was really awesome that I didn't really have kind of that shyness to get over. Always really confident speaking in front of a group. And I think the other thing was just patience. And I think that's something that also has made me a great trainer over the years because you had to be patient when you were dealing with lots of littles all the time.
Well, that's a built-in audience that you can really practice on for a long period of time. So, what's your journey been like? What did you do when you went to college, or after you got out of college, or what was your journey like?
Well, I started working in real estate right out of high school, actually. I had done a couple of years. I had done about a year and a half of school in Europe to learn art history. And I had these grand dreams of being an art teacher. But, growing up on a farm in a big family, I had to get a job right away. So I started answering phones in a real estate office, and I fell in love with the industry. And 21 years later, I'm still in the real estate space. I've transitioned from answering phones to being a licensed agent to marketing and bookkeeping, and I've been in education for about the last 15 years exclusively. And it's just kind of been one of those where you just kind of keep learning as things evolve. I remember the first time that my broker ever brought a fax machine into the office, and then the first time we got computers, and how it just kind of changed as time went on. And I've loved helping people learn their way through new things, and it's just kind of evolved over the years.
That's awesome.
Well, when we were messaging back and forth, you had talked about one of the things you wanted to talk about was happiness versus success. Coming from a big family, I'm sure you had some learning to do about how to come from happiness. Can you kind of tell us maybe a story or something that how you've figured out what happiness versus success is?
Yeah, I learned really early on that money doesn't buy happiness. I think that was something that I'm really thankful for. We didn't have a lot, and so going without really teaches you early on in life that you don't need a lot to be happy. And I've just kind of sat back and listened to speakers over the last 2 decades talk about how success equals happiness. So once you get a certain number, you hit a certain quota, or you make a certain amount of money, then that's what's going to make you happy. And so I've always kind of come at it from the opposite. As a speaker and a trainer, I've always been, you need to define what success looks like for you. And maybe that means more time off, or more time with family, or more downtime, or and then working towards those goals is what's going to make you happy, not the other way around. And that's just something that I've kind of always lived by. And, I always think happiness is a bit of a choice as well. We wake up every day and we can choose to be happy or we can choose to be miserable. And you can choose to, as my grandmother used to say, you can pitch a tent and live in miserable all your whole life if you want, or you can choose to keep moving. And so, it's just kind of been the way that I've lived my life and run my business is setting goals that are going to know that I'm going to be happier if I reach those goals and not knowing that I have to hit certain monetary numbers to be happy.
Well, I'm going to get to the she said, he said in a second, but what are the topics you're really passionate about talking about?
I talk a lot about bravery. That's definitely one of the things that I talk about a lot. I think one of the very best lessons I ever learned from a boss was I was answering phones and I was complaining to my broker one day that the agents were being really cranky with me. And he said to me, Val, like a lot of these agents are, if you average it all out, you're sitting here making minimum wage, but they're working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're sometimes going weeks and weeks making less money than you are. And that's a scary thing. And I just remember him saying to me, a lot of people in this business, they're afraid a lot of the time that the deal's not going to go through and that they're going to lose a client and that next paycheck's not going to come. And when I realized pretty early on that, people really do walk around with a lot of fear, it just changed the way that I feel about people and about teaching people and coming from a place of empathy, because learning new things is hard and can be scary, and not knowing what's going to bring your next deal around the corner is scary. And so I talk a lot about bravery, and my definition of bravery is doing it scared, because we're never going to not be afraid. We're always going to have a healthy amount of fear. And, even if you've done things a million times, sometimes it can be scary. So bravery around just doing something scared and not being afraid to jump into something new, technology or prospecting or starting a business or getting on stage and speaking. Bravery is just something we all have to kind of dig deep for. So I talk a lot about that.
Well, like I said a little bit ago, I just absolutely was infatuated with your topic at Woman Up. So can you explain to everyone what you talked about? It's she said, he said.
I think it's funnier to listen to her try to title
it. Well, I think it's such an important topic, especially for women. When they asked me to come back and speak again this year, I said, I really want to speak on something that's near to my heart. And that is the fact that we need more female leadership, but also more female voices on our stages and in front of cameras, especially in our industry. And so I kind of started out by saying, when I noticed this a couple of years ago, when I was looking around and I was at conferences and I was looking at the people on stage, and I realized that a lot of times they didn't represent the people in the audience. They were, primarily all men. And I thought, we need more female voices, because I know so many amazing women who are doing amazing things, and I want to hear those stories. And so, I started about 2 years ago when I started my own business. I started reaching out to a lot of those women saying, I want to have the opportunity to help you get on stage if you want to, or be in front of an audience of any size, or be on camera, or have your work recognized. And as I started out saying at Woman Up, I started to get responses back, and they all started with things like, I'm sorry, or I don't want to be presumptuous. It's okay if you hate this. This is probably a stupid idea, but, and I was just so taken aback that immediately so many of these women were minimizing the work that they were doing, or, starting out by saying this might be terrible, but, and then even when they weren't saying those things, they were all using the word just. So I'm just to this, or it's, I just wanted to send this over. Maybe it's okay. Or it's just an idea I had, or I'm just a agent, or I'm just a secretary. And I just realized, the words that we use to talk about ourselves are so important, and maybe even more important than the words that other people use to talk about us. And so I started really looking into the way that men talk versus the way that women talk, especially about ourselves. And it was really fascinating when we start to realize that there are reasons that we use the words that we do. And I started asking some of these women, what are the biggest reasons why you would minimize yourself? And I got two responses. And the first one was, I really feel like I need to soften my words so I don't come across as the B word that we all hear often. And the second reason was, I'm afraid they're going to judge me. So I'm subconsciously asking them to be gentle with their feedback. And so a lot of it was fear-based, but it was also, fear of what are they going to think of me? And so there were, kind of three main reasons that I found that that people use these words that they do. And the first one is that we're a product of our environment. If we're taught to use those words when we're young, those are the words that we'll use when we're older. And that was really interesting because then it went into the fact that I found that words have genders. And that we're kind of taught from an early age that things like pretty and cute and shy are also, are usually attributed to women, but also words like naggy and bossy and nice. So we kind of feel like we have to fit in those categories. Whereas for men, they hear words like strong, easygoing, assertive, confident, and direct, which are basically the same words, but they can be used in a totally different context.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that was really interesting when I started realizing that, thinking, when we're taught that those words have genders, we tend to sort of assign those words to ourselves as we grow older, and we think we have to fit into the nice category, so we're not bossy or nagging. And the other thing that came up was that we just simply communicate differently than men. Ladies are more likely to be taught to be nice and polite, and they're more likely to be punished for being loud and competitive and creating conflict, whereas boys, when they're younger, are more likely to be taught to be competitive, and that winning is important, and they're more likely to be taught to avoid emotions. And so those two things, when you look at them, boys are more wired to communicate for status, and women are more wired to communicate for connection, which made a lot of sense. So I started looking at and realizing, yes, we tend to connect with emotion and use those warm, fuzzy words, and we tend to sort of diminish things that might be conflict. And men are kind of grow up to be louder, to be more assertive, because that leads to status. And so that was just really fascinating for me. And then I started applying that to how women then get on stage or in front of a camera and the words that they use. And so when we're wired for connection, we tend to avoid the win. Everybody wins, right? And if we're all feeling good, whereas with status, whoever talks the longest and the loudest tends to win. And so that's where mansplaining comes from, where the guys jump in to say, well, this is what I think you mean, because now they have, that kind of loudest and longest explanation. And when we're wired for connection, we tend to stay on topic longer and pass the mic to each other and ask more questions. Whereas a man wired for status shifts the topics back to what they're comfortable with so that they can talk a little bit more. And it kind of goes on, those are some of the topics that I talked about, but overall, the kind of the point that I came to is that we think we can't be wired for connection and also win at the game of communication, but we're wrong. Where we have to start is we have to start with how we think and speak about ourselves. And I think that's really kind of the core of where we get stuck, is that, we have to make sure that we realize that if we're talking negatively or diminishing about our own worth or our own subject of conversation, other people are going to apply those words to us. And so one of the first big points that I made at Woman Up was, when you're on stage or in front of a camera, you belong there. And it's important that we remember that, and we kind of, go into things with that attitude instead of, oh, maybe, this isn't good enough, or maybe I'm just this. It's no, I have thoughts and things that I want to communicate. And so that was one of the biggest points that I made.
That's huge. That's
Yeah.
absolutely huge. I mean, Kim and I have been having this ongoing conversation about this very topic, because it's, I was born and raised on a farm in Nebraska, and my upbringing was exactly what you're talking about. Just very, be polite and, be very gentle and not, you're more like in the background, really. And then to put myself out there, we've had several conversations about it. This is a Kickbutt leadership course, and I need to be the example of what a Kickbutt leader is. And that all has to do with the words that I use, how I believe in myself. And we talked about fear. We talked about how the fear, this is a culmination of 7 years of a journey that I've taken since my husband passed away. And the fact that I have fear. I have fear that somebody's not going to like it. And what then? And so when you're talking to people that have fear or that are wondering how they can be a little more not really aggressive, more present when they speak, whether they're speaking in front of a group or not, what are some suggestions that you have?
So I say to them, sometimes it's stop waiting for the break, because especially if we're on a panel, we wait until someone defers to us and asks us a question. So sometimes it can just be a little more being assertive instead of waiting for the break, saying, I agree with you. I'd love to expand on that. And so sometimes it's just having those little segues into conversation. Well-placed humor is a really good one, knowing when to get people smiling, because when you get people smiling, they're on your side and, will tend to agree with you more. The biggest one, though, is making yourself the hero of your stories. Men, when they tell stories, tend to tell stories where they accomplished something and they were the hero and they did something good. Whereas, funnily enough, when women tell stories, we tend to tell stories where we're, we failed at something and we learned from it, which leads us to connection, because other people say, oh, me too. But at the same time, we also have to learn to tell stories where we're the hero and we did something great, and get away from the feeling that we're bragging, because that will really stop us from, that self-deprecation and that diminishing language that we use. And some of it is just, knowing your pause words, those words that you say. Sometimes they're or or right. We all have those words, and really focusing on how to eliminate those words from our vocabulary so we can sound a little more confident. But really the biggest thing is don't try and act like a man. Just be a really strong, wonderful woman, because you don't have to be a man to succeed. That we need all kinds of people. Be yourself, but learn to be confident in who you are and know that you bring value. And a lot of that is just changing the script that we read to ourselves about ourselves.
Wow. We just talked about that. I came to a place in my life I had to make a decision of whether I was in a man's world. Mm-hmm. And I had to make a decision of if I was still going to be the princess that I am and show up authentically, or try to diminish that part. Mm-hmm. And show up, so I would fit in. And the funny thing about that to me is we'll never fit in as a man because we're not a man.
That's right.
And so why we say that to ourselves, I'm not sure. But that was part of really a struggle that I had for, a little bit of trying to figure out if that's what I should do. And now on this side of it, I laugh because it was my, princessness that actually brought the biggest impact.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When you are yourself, and that's the thing I hear from people all the time when I coach them on speaking is, at some point it clicks and they look at me and they say, you mean I can just be me? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what the world needs. You, when you stop trying to be somebody else, that's when you're amazing. Yeah. And it does, it feels a little bit weird because we sometimes grow up feeling like we have to be what success looks like for somebody else for us to be successful. That comes back to, define what success looks like to you and then go after that with all your heart. And you'd be amazed at how many people will gravitate towards that realness. I had a friend that said to me the other day, you underestimate how hungry people are for realness. And I thought, you're right. We don't realize, if we just are real, how many people are going to say, oh, thank God, give me more of that. 2 scoops, please.
I love that. Two scoops, please. I love it.
Well, at Awesome Females, I think it was last year. It was this year or last year. We talked about the word just.
Mm-hmm.
and how we all use the word just all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made a conscious decision when I'm doing emails, because I caught myself not just using the word verbally, but using the word in my emails or in things I was writing. And the word just really needs to be eliminated for the most part from a vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just.
It brings
Yeah.
about timidity, I think. Like
Yeah.
instead of being confident in what you're saying, whatever it is, I think it does bring out about a timidity of, well, if it's okay with you, I need your permission for
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is when I use the word just, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked about that with a group of ladies a while back and realized how many times I start my emails with that. So, it'll say, Mary, just wanted to check in, just needed to get back to you. And I thought and so I've made myself delete it every time and start the sentence. And the sentence means exactly the same thing without it.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets to the point. And sometimes we feel like, oh, maybe I do need to soften that. But the reality is I'm not just asking if you received my invoice 60 days ago. I'm saying, hey, you should have received my invoice 60 days ago.
Yeah.
And we're okay to say those things. That doesn't make us, that doesn't make us rude or impolite. It gets to the point. And I think that sometimes that's right. We have to give ourselves permission to be confident instead of asking permission from others all the time.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a huge point. That's a huge, and I think that's what really impressed me when you were talking at Woman Up about it, because so many of us we haven't given ourselves permission. Just have not given ourselves permission. Have not given ourselves permission to be whatever it is we were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, that was a point I made at Woman Up too, was one of the things that we can do is call each other on our minimizing words. I've said to my friends, when you hear me saying that, I want you to poke me. And when I hear you saying that, I'm going to poke you. And at first it'll be annoying, but it'll help us break the habit. Calling each other on those things, because, we rise together. When ladies around us do better, we all do better. And I think that that's super important.
It's good stuff.
Well, Kim has a saying that, as the water rises, the boats all rise together.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all as women do improve our self-image and
Mm-hmm.
how we talk with one another and the words that we choose to use, we all will get better.
Yeah, it's so true.
I don't know if we can lose if we're like uplifting each other and holding each other accountable. I love the poking somebody, or getting poked if I'm saying the wrong thing, because I think if you really want to be a great leader and you really want to be authentic, then you need to have someone in your life that says, I'm calling you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, feedback is so important. I crave it. I want it. And part of that is I have to learn how to take the hard stuff. I have to learn to take that with a grain of salt. And part of that for me has been learning who doesn't get to travel in my head with me. That one person that filled out that really snarky review, and I got 72 other amazing reviews that were super helpful. And that one person, like, they don't get to ride around in my head with me, and I get to make that choice. But my good friends who do poke me and give me good feedback and tell me the things that are important to me, and will help me grow, those are the ones that I want to hang on to and think on and stew with, and just kind of, and part of that is, again, just giving ourselves permission to say that person doesn't get to matter to me. That opinion isn't something that I need to take on. But opinions from people that have my best interest at heart, those are the ones that I need to really think on. And sometimes we think that all feedback is valid, and it's not.
Right.
It's really not.
Exactly.
I think we need to check it. Like, I think we need to, because I have blind spots that I don't want to, be thinking I've got something covered and I don't. And so I always look at what someone says and try to really assess if there's any valid point they're making.
Yeah.
And if there is not, I agree with you. That should be like in the trash, because there are going to be haters. There are going to be, people online. If you're online much, there's going to be trolls. That their only thing is to spread negative, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you have to. I think you're exactly right about it. You have to decide if you're going to let them get on the bus, because I don't want them on my bus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's really amazing how we allow one bad remark to become what floats around in our head when we've got 70 positive remarks that we should be taking on and absorbing, and anything that's valid suggestion, taking that to heart. Instead, we let this one thing that's going on over here be the one that does swim around. So I love your idea of just making sure you choose who you're going to allow floating around in your head.
Yeah.
I think, and I love your poking idea. I think I'm going to add that to my mindfulness tools and techniques.
Oh, great. You know who's going to get poked, right? Just me.
But you only get poked until you break the habit. So
No, my guess is she'll poke me more than I poke her. So
yeah. And then they're just small, nothing, it's not rocket science. It's holding ourselves accountable, giving ourselves permission to be confident, holding our sisters accountable, and then, just not letting them live rent free in our head when they're not the right voices to be listening to. And it takes practice though. I would love to say that I have mastered these ideas, but they're things I have to work on every day and rework on every day. I might have one really good day where I think, okay, that person doesn't bother me. But then I wake up the next day and think, oh, I got to start it all over again, and that's okay. That's just part of living.
Well, and I think that's a really important point you make, because some people might look at you and say, okay, well, she must have it all together. Or, and if she knows this stuff, she teaches this stuff, she talks about this stuff, so she must have it down pat. And none of us have it down pat. It's like when I talk about the mindfulness techniques, like things like breathing and pausing and reframing a thought in the course, I catch myself every day making a mistake that I'm not doing it. And it's really easy for us to start criticizing ourselves and thinking, well, they've got it down, so I can't do that. And that's absolutely, you work at whatever you can do every day. You start with where you are, with what you have, and you take one step forward.
Yeah. I say all the time, I teach the things I need to learn the most, because then I'm just hearing myself say it all the time. Yes. I think there's a comment that just came through that said, I don't think anyone ever masters anything. And I agree with that. I don't think anyone ever masters anything. I think we all just have to get up and work at it every day. And being willing to do that is just how we continue to learn and grow.
Absolutely.
Well, for the record, I'm a hot mess and I own it.
Girl, we are all a hot mess.
Yeah. So, so Valerie, where are you speaking next?
It's going to sound super extravagant, but I took the month of August off. So I am off the road the whole month. And so I'm really excited about that. But in September, it just gets insane. I'd love to tell you where I am, but I don't even know. Everywhere in September. I'm going to be in Virginia a couple of times. I'm running a couple of campfire workshops in September, October, November, which is they're really great 2-day workshops on how to get more, to master these things that we're talking about how to get more comfortable on stage in front of people and better at writing. So I'm really excited about those. And just a really busy fall. I'm going to be all over the place. And National Association of Realtors, obviously. So a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Are you going to be speaking at NAR?
I am, twice. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, that's I wish I could. I can't go this year. I really want, because I love Boston, but this is one year that I can't make it. I'm really disappointed, but I'll have to see if I can't find a way of listening into you. I know they record them and stuff, because I'd love to hear what you're talking about. Are you talking about kind of the same thing?
I am. I'm doing a shortened version of Campfire. So how to use storytelling to improve our marketing, our teaching, and our writing. And the other one is, I'm really excited. You're going to love this. It's a panel of 4 ladies from all over North America who are running their own businesses and just killing it at being really amazing female leaders. And so we're going to do an hour panel on how they do it, and they're going to spill all their secrets. And I think it's going to be amazing.
Oh,
I
that sounds
love it.
incredible. I really wish I could be there. Darn it.
I might Facebook Live that one.
Time, you know?
I love it.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday
No problem.
to come on and speak with us. And again, I really, she and I had not met before. And I was introduced to her one time at Woman Up. But I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with us. And I think your message is so important. And I love the work you're doing. So I'm really glad I got a chance to chat with you and be with you.
Mm-hmm.
And
very nice to meet you.
Well, thanks so much. It was great to meet you too.
Well, I'm Coni Meyers with Kickbutt Leadership, and this is my co-host.
I'm Kim White with the My Sexy Business team.
And if you want to know more about the Kickbutt Leadership course, you can go to kickbuttleadership.com. And we're running a special on the course right now. If you are a California Association of Realtors member, there's a special link for you to go on and check it out. It is available on the CAR website. So, and we'll be back actually with Laura Miraglio, who is the education person at that handles all the courses that go up onto CAR. So she'll be back with us at the 1:30 Central Time, and that is 11:30 Pacific Time. So we'll be back in just a little bit.